not what you achieve, it's what you overcome. That's what defines your career. Good morning to everyone present here today. We, the Guest Lectures Committee, would like to welcome you all to the first lecture of GLC's new series, Careers and Conversations, a stage to learn from the best and how to imbibe these learnings in one's future prospects. We'd like to welcome the first guest of Careers and Conversations, the Director of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, Dr. Raman Ramachandran. As we move ahead, we'll get to know more about the fascinating story of an agricultural graduate who went on from being a research scientist to a secure government job to quitting that to begin his corporate career in his early 30s. Sir went on to lead the South Asian operations of the largest chemical company and then in his current capacity is an academician. His career has been full of coincidences and choices to say the least. This conversation will be hosted by Mr. Arun Thukral. Arun sir was the managing director and CEO of Access Securities Limited. Is currently the professor of practice at KJ Somaiya Institute of Management and is lead corporate relations. He is also the author of Yogi on Dalal Street. I'd also like to request all the alumni who have connected with us through YouTube Live to drop in their questions in the YouTube chat box, which we'll pick at the end. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shrestha. And good morning, sir. Welcome to our first episode of Careers and Conversation. So today we have a truly inspiring guest whose contribution in the field of education as well as business is unparalleled. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Raman once again. So actually Dr. Raman needs no introduction, but we would know more about him from him only today. So I think let me start the beginning of your career or your growing up years. Why agriculture? Very simple question.
Yeah. So it's a good question. And first of all, let me start by thanking the guest lecture committee and also thanking you for thinking of this. And I believe this is a new initiative, and hopefully the students will benefit a lot from listening to a wide range of people. And I think it's and you will hear today from me. Career is more than just getting an MBA or getting an education. There's a lot of other things that are involved in it. And by the time you leave here, hopefully you will have some perspective. And that's the objective of this. So I would like to congratulate all of you for really thinking of this and really setting this up. Now, this is an interesting question as to why agriculture. And I have to be very honest. Sometimes when in a public forum, you ask these questions, it's like from the age of 5, I knew, farmers were the most important people, they feed us, and hence I wanted to do agriculture. No. In fact, I was born and brought up in the city of Chennai, and like most urban children, in those days, I didn't even know that there was actually a university which taught agriculture. I thought agriculture is something that is, the farmers do it. Whenever I go to vacation to visit my grandma in Kerala, we see all these paddy fields. So that was my understanding of agriculture. So I was, brought up in a family which was full of engineers. Early on, my father figured that my mathematical inclination was not that good. Wiring was not that well. So he said, maybe you shouldn't go into engineering because you may not succeed. You should think about something else. And unlike today where there are tremendous choices, but also a lot of competition, when I was growing up, which is in the 70s, some of your parents probably weren't born at that time, the choices were very limited. So you either became an engineer or you became a doctor, right? So I chose the field of pursuing my medical degree. Now, while I did have good scores from college, for various reasons we should not get into at this point, I did not get into a medical college, and we were kind of pondering what next. Should it be some other BCom or something? And we had a professor who was our neighbor. He was a professor of one of the leading colleges in Chennai called Presidency College. He was professor of botany, and he said, look, why don't you look at agriculture as a profession? It is an up-and-coming field, and most graduates who kind of come out of the college now get immediate employment. That's what led to applying to agriculture, and I ended up in the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University in Coimbatore. Having joined that, and it's a 4-year program, I said, let me pursue that, and I went on to do a master's at a place called Indian Agricultural Research Institute, which is a premier research institution for agriculture, research teaching institution in Delhi. Pusa Institute, for those of you, you might remember Pusa Institute, Nagar, old Rajendra Nagar. And then, of course, my father was a big influence because he always wanted me to be an academician. So then I went on to do my Ph.D. I went to Australia. So that's agriculture. So again, it was more of a coincidence. If we had not had that conversation with the professor of botany, probably I would be in some other place.
So you said coincidence.
Yes.
So that's what I think we have. You have
Exactly.
seen this
That's
theme
right.
is coincidences
Yes.
and choices.
Well designed, well thought through. Yes.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes coincidence is that universe is whispering to you, and then
Yes.
it opens a world of infinite possibilities.
Absolutely.
That's what it happens.
Yeah.
And thank you for being so authentic, because if, as you said correctly, that everybody would think that I wanted to be
Yeah.
in agriculture,
Yeah.
but it's not like that.
No,
it
did
happens.
happen.
So
Yes.
you went in the flow. Great. And I think later, obviously, you joined BASF. Anything else before joining BASF? Anything comes to your mind that this is, or how BASF happened?
Yeah, so my career, so now it has three very distinct phases. Yeah, the first phase was, as I said, I did my PhD, and the first about 6-7 years was spent in pure academic research in the area of agriculture. So in fact, I came back after my PhD, briefly taught in Delhi University in the North Delhi campus, and then I actually got a job as a scientist in the National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, which, if you are in the scientific field, will know is one of the leading CSIR laboratories, which is a government owned. So it was actually a very nice job, because it is what you call a central government class 1 job. I had a nice apartment which was like 5 minutes away from my lab. I could go home for my lunch, And those of you who are from Pune or who have been to Pune, you know that NCL is in a very nice campus in the Aund area, and in those days it was even more beautiful. It was far away from the city. So I could have had a good, normal, comfortable life, right? But there was something which I found not right, because the level of research that I was doing, the whole environment was not really that conducive. And so this itch started, and I started to apply, and I got a contract research job where I was supposed to do research for an international organization in Africa, in Kenya, and then partly in the Philippines. So I was struggling with this because I'd just got married, and this option came. And so here is a permanent central government job for life versus a 3-year contract job going to a place like Africa and Philippines. And I was struggling with this decision, and I had this great friend by name Saini, and even now I remember. So we used to be kind of, there was a bachelor dining apartment for bachelor scientists, and one day we had finished our dinner, and I was walking back with him, and I said, Saini, look, I'm really confused. I don't know how to take a decision in this. And he simplified the matter very easily. He said, Raman, look, if you want to lead a retired life at the age of 25, don't leave NCL, right? Because, it's a comfortable, cushy life. But if you want to try and achieve something in life, then don't stay here, because you may not achieve much. You will have a very comfortable life, but you may not. And that really made the decision. So then next day I submitted a resignation. I just got engaged, and my future father-in-law thought I was really crazy. He called up my father and said, "What's your son doing?" But that's a big kind of risky decision and a choice that I made. And so I went to Africa, then I was in the Philippines, then I went from there to the US with a research grant of my own to University of Wisconsin, and I spent 3 years there. And so that was the research phase of my career. And during that time, my goal in life was to be a faculty, right? But then I had a very specific objective that I also want to be a faculty in a US university. So that's when I got there, I said, now I should try and achieve this goal. And I applied a few times. I got pretty close to a couple of jobs. But, it was, as they say, close but no cigar. It really didn't work out. And then I realized that, my child was around 3 years. My daughter was about 3 years old. And when you are doing these contract research jobs, every year you are already thinking, where is my grant going to come from next year? So it's a very unstable kind of situation. So I guess in some ways I was also very pragmatic. So at some point I said, this idealistic goal of trying to be a faculty in a university probably is not going to happen. And so I kind of, started to explore other options. And then luckily I got a job with a company called Sandoz, which is a, Swiss pharmaceutical, agrochemical and chemical company. And they recruited me originally in their R&D in the US. And there was an option to relocate to India on a slightly different role. And so in late 92, I came back to India with a job from Sandoz. And and then about 3 years later, and that was the beginning of my corporate career. And my corporate career started in research and more in development. But very soon I realized that, somehow I had a bit of a, not a passion. I started to like other aspects of business, and so I consciously sought roles that were of R&D. So initially they were given as additional responsibility, and companies like, sometimes, this is also, you may call it luck, to be in companies which enable such transitions to happen. It does not happen everywhere, where you are also then given opportunities to kind of explore things beyond your own known competency or skill set. So I moved out of R&D. Early on, I started in product management, which is, in technology-related companies, these are not very difficult for a person with a technical background to move into product management, etc. So I moved into that. Then I was in a business development role, and that was also a business role which was spanned over different countries. So I was looking after Africa, Middle East, and parts of Asia. And that's when we got acquired in the year 2000 or 98, and then I moved to BASF. So that's where this whole journey with BASF started. So just to summarize, I had this research career and then moved into the corporate world in research, but then very quickly moved out into adjacencies like product management, business development. Yeah.
So much you achieved at that time. So I think there are 2-3 things which are coming out. One is that life gave you so many choices and you have to decide. And I also see the role of a mentor. You said you discussed with someone and he made things easy for you. And you always wanted to go out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So at any point of time, there was any risk of failure in your mind? Because you are changing your field. You are a research scientist. You wanted to be a faculty. Then you were into product. Then you were into marketing or business development.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think, look, risk of failure was always there. Look, that decision I took to go to Kenya when you had a regular job, that was a huge risk, because there are lots of people in science who spend 10-15 years just doing postdocs, and they hit a wall, and they never, finally they end up as a low-level research scientist. So these are risks. But if you don't take risk, it's like the market, right? The bigger the risk, the bigger the payoff, right? And careers are about taking risk, in my opinion. I've taken more than one risk, and maybe I will also like to share, and this is again maybe taking a risk and also moving out of your comfort zone, which is extremely important for success in life, right, as a human being. And my second example of moving out of my comfort zone and seeking a riskier option came in 2004 when I was actually a regional marketing manager based in Singapore in BASF. And BASF has 12 operating businesses, from very commodity chemicals to very specialized chemicals like those that go into agriculture. At that time, I also had a permanent residency in Australia. Now, permanent residency in Australia, I don't know how it works now. In those days, you got the permanent residency and they gave you about 4 or 5 years, before which you have to physically move to Australia and spend 2 continuous years in Australia in order to then regularize it and then go on to get your Australian passport or whatever. So I was in Singapore on this job, 2004. I remember clearly September of 2004, my 4-year or 5-year that would end. So I will have to relocate before that. And around the same time, I was also identifying. Now, companies like BASF have a very systematic way, and many companies do this, right? And very systematic way of identifying what is called as potential executive talent. Now, I was fortunate to be one of those people who were identified. Now, when you are identified as a potential executive talent, they would also then challenge you with very challenging roles. So in 2004, they came to me and said, now you've been identified, but now you have to prove yourself. And we have an opportunity for you to prove yourself, which is that we have a business in India, the ag business in India, which is one of the worst performing businesses. It has got a very low profitability. It has got a lot of assets, which are, even kind of risky assets. So we want you to go there, and we'll give you like 2 to 3 years. Show us if this business has the potential to make money. And if you are able to turn that around, then of course, you'll get promoted to the executive position, which is like a glass ceiling. This is the next level. And so there was this dilemma. Now, do I go back to India with this very risky job where things could completely go wrong? If we didn't turn it around, you potentially even lose your job. Versus going to Australia, where the BASF Australia was willing to give me a kind of a product manager role, at least to go and establish myself in Australia. So this was again a choice between, you all know I'm talking 2004, right? Going to Australia, comfortable job, great country to live in. The place was Melbourne. If you look at Melbourne, one of the best cities in the world to live, versus coming to Mumbai to run this business, which is highly questionable. Yeah. And I chose to come back to Mumbai, and I always think of that as a very defining moment in my life, because we succeeded. That's a completely different story. We succeeded. We turned it around. That business, which was the 10th least profitable business in Asia Pacific, went on to become, over the next 4 to 5 years, one of the top 10 profit generating businesses in the world, mind you, country businesses in the world for BASF, over a 4 to 5 year period. Yeah. So it was a great success, and it was also to me a person, and to all of you doing MBA, I didn't get an MBA as you have seen, but then I had a lot of opportunity to learn, because companies like BASF really supported us to do a lot of executive programs. So and I have reams of notebooks where I have written down things that I learned. And even before coming to India, I have a book where I've said these are the things which I've learned, which will apply. It also gave me tremendous conviction about management education, because a lot of what you learn in real life does happen if you are faithful to it and if you really implement it properly. From simple things like how do you conduct a meeting to how do you decisions, all of this what is written out there does work. Yeah, so it has also improved my conviction in management education, and all that is researched and done in business schools. Yeah.
Great. I think useful nuggets.
Yeah.
We are all learning so much today. And I think this is a good habit of putting down on paper or journaling and all and writing down your goal. I think it again gets you more conviction. So before I move to BASF, at this point, I think you are doing so many things. You were getting in and out and taking lot of risks, going beyond your comfortable zone, because I think you always believe that your journey starts at the end of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So again, the same questions. When you do this, what was the value system? What was driving you that you are taking so many risks, and you had a family, and you were getting into new areas and new themes, like whether it's marketing or business development, or ultimately you would reach somewhere, and we were lucky. Later on, I think we'll talk about that. Is there something which was driving you? Like you take this decision because now you have a family also.
Yeah.
How to decide? I think decision process, maybe a little more on that before we move to BASF.
Yeah. It's a good question. I'm not sure that I completely get the question, but I think innately some people are wired like that, in my opinion.
That's what
right?
I mean,
so I'm somebody who, and maybe it is also because of my sporting history. I've always been a sports person, and always played competitive sport. And when you play competitive sport, you know that competing instinct kind of also takes over in your life. So you're also
part I wanted to
constantly
come out,
kind of thinking about how do you better yourself, right?
Correct.
But I must tell you an anecdote here about competition, and so you guys can go and Google a person by name R.A. Shah, right? R.A. Shah is about 90 years old today. He is a partner in Crawford and Bailey. He's one of the most well-known corporate lawyers. You will know him, right? I mean, and even today he is the chairman of, I think, Procter and Gamble. He's chairman of at least 3-4 different companies, right? So R.A. Shah used to be the member of the board of BASF India when I was the chairman of BASF India, which was in 2013. And one day, I know after one of the board meetings over lunch, he was asking me, "So Raman, what do you do outside of work?" And I said, "Look, Mr. Shah, I run, and I do kind of long distance running because that was what I used to do in those days." So then he said, and R.A. Shah, and this conversation happened when he was probably 84, 85 years old, every day goes to Wellington Club and plays badminton in the morning for about an hour at the age of 85, 86, right? And so he said, no, the running only chodo, you have to play sports where you are competing with somebody else. That is when you walk into the room in the morning, you will have that competitive spirit. Well, I'm just using that as an, I don't fully, because I believe running also has an equally important role to play in how you develop yourself as a human being and a citizen and a corporate citizen. But I thought that's a good anecdote also to share with you.
And I would reserve one question when we discuss KJSIM about this competitive spirit.
Absolutely. Okay.
So I would ask. But right now about BASF. So 2 decades at
Yeah,
BASF.
that's right. Yeah.
So just give us important highlights. What you did at BASF.
So one I already talked about. So BASF is a 155-year-old German company. A chemical technology company which about 120,000 employees, highly R&D driven company. They're kind of, so just to give you an example, most of you are now listening, iPod, because before that, when you were not born, we used to have something called magnetic tape, and the whole magnetic tape technology was invented by BASF, right? And back in 1942, by the way, right? The first London Philharmonic Orchestra symphony was recorded in the BASF studio in Ludwigshafen in 1939 or 40 or whatever, when this technology was recorded. So that's the company, and they have been in Asia, all over the world for a number of years. In India, actually more than 100 years old. So I had a great career because it is also one of those companies which really gave opportunities for people. It identified talent. As I said, a lot of training programs. And then, so one of those examples was coming here to run the Indian business. And by the way, to take it on from there, exactly 3 years after I came, and as was discussed with me before I came, because I found I got promoted to senior vice president and got relocated back to Singapore as the marketing head for Asia Pacific for one of the business verticals. And 3 years later, I ended up running that business in Asia Pacific, and this is the ag business over 17 countries in Asia Pacific. It was about a $500 million business. 5 to 6 countries really contributed to that, between India, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, and Indonesia, basically about 70-80% of the business. But it also gave me extensive opportunities to travel across, Asia Pacific, get to know people, get to know different cultures. I can safely say that I've probably traveled more in Japan than many Japanese would have, from the northern end of Japan to southern end of Japan. More in China than many, because when you're running ag businesses, you don't just go to Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka and Shanghai and Beijing. You get to a place like Harbin, which is more close to Inner Mongolia in China. So I really, got that opportunity to kind of, really get this exposure to the entire Asia Pacific besides Europe, etc. And the kind of journey continued because in 2012, the managing director of BASF India, which is, by the way, the only other listed entity of BASF in the world other than BASF SE, which is listed in the DAX stock exchange in Germany, he retired, and then they came and said, I think you're the right person, will you go back to India? And so, of course, I definitely came, he said, I will do that. And I came back as the chairman managing director of BASF India and also the head of the BASF group companies in South Asia. Yeah. Now, this was again a big change management experience for me because the group companies in South Asia had not grown the previous 3 years. They were kind of flat growth. And the regional office and global office was not very happy about it. They said, because the companies like BASF typically talk about growth in terms of GDP plus minus certain percentage. So BASF's strategy was that in every country you need to grow 2 to 3 percentage point above the GDP, right? So if what's our GDP? One of the students here. What is India's average GDP in the last maybe 5 years? You're all MBA students. You know what a GDP is, right? Right? Yeah. So take a guess. 15%, 5%? Huh? Yeah. So close, yeah, 7. So 2 to 3% you need to grow at 9 to 10%. Yeah. So, but we had been flat. So it was quite a. But I came in here and one of the things that I've found working in business leadership or any leadership role is first you look at who are there in your team, right? Do we have the right team members, right? And sometimes you have to make those difficult calls to say that, somebody is in a place where he or she should not be. And then to co-create goals, because I've always found that setting goals is very, very important in running organizations, enterprises, and of course even running your own life as an individual, right? You need to have goals. So we had 5 goals that we had set, and these goals, some of them were very quantitative, like there is this. If you now do this 2% above your GDP, the Indian South Asian business used to be about 1.1 billion euros, which would be around roughly 8,500 crores in those days. So if you have to grow 2 to 3 percentage point over that, over the next 5 years, you need to create another 500, 600 million euros. And that's exactly, so we had to set a target saying the next 5 years, we have to be 1.7 billion euros in your sales. And then you also set aspirational targets because, human beings always like aspirational targets. So we said we have to be in the top 3 in Asia. Why top 3? Because, China is humongous, right? I mean, so you're very far away. So if you're not in the top 3, you will not be taken note of, right? So the clear objective was that in terms of sales and revenues, you need to be in the top 3, so the management takes note of you and says, wow, these guys are grown, how do we make this even more? Right? And then we had other targets, which are more people related, that we really need to have a team that is highly energized, etc. So I will not go into the details. So just to reiterate the importance of setting goals, and then we had a whole cultural change that was facilitated. And again here, my friend Ranjan Banerjee, who currently runs BIT School of Management, he facilitated a 2-day workshop where we came up with a kind of whole program which had an acronym called LEAP, which is Leadership, Excellence, Action and Performance. And using that, which identified 7 critical behaviors under leadership, under concept of meritocracy and the concept of customer centricity, we completely transformed the business and the way that organization worked, right? And lo and behold, after 6.5 years when I retired, we were at about 1.7. Over the 6.5 years that I led that organization, except for 1 year, which was 2014, when there was some big crisis that happened, I can't remember, we grew 8-9% by volume every year and 2-3% by price, so about 10 to 11%. So we were really able to bring that business to the next level. We had almost every year we were investing about 300 to 400 crores in assets in India. We signed a MOU with Adani's to set up a $2 billion petrochemical plant in the Mundra port. Now, this didn't happen, but you can go back to 2019, Vibrant Gujarat news releases, and you will see, you might even see a photo of me and a couple of my colleagues with Prime Minister Modi and Gautam Adani. We are kind of signing off this. So it was a huge kind of an account. Now, what is the message out of all this? Now, this is not about me making all this. The only thing that I did was to create an environment where people had the freedom to really do things, And I personally believe that 99% of the people walk into any enterprise with very sincere intention to contribute. Now, what happens is that the environment sometimes becomes so toxic and the kind of, it's not an enabling environment. And when you don't have an enabling environment, you really take away that energy and take away that sincerity with which a human being walks into an organization. And that's when a toxic environment starts to prevail, right? Yeah.
Thanks. I think you preempted my question about people. You answered that. Yeah. And another thing, I think what we are getting in that sometime opportunity knocks very softly. Like he got an opportunity to get in India and then took that role and then what he did. So, and your love for change management, because I remember when I met you last year, by that time it was announced that you would be joining us. And that time only you told me that these are my 4 goals. So, and obviously you are working. So when we discuss KJSIM, I want you to throw some more light. But before that, maybe PI industry. So you got into PI industry, yes, which is again a wealth creator for people like me. Like I work in stock markets. I worked in stock markets for many years, and we used to give examples of what PI industry is doing, even BASF. So how you got into this, and anything you want to share?
So PI Industries, I knew so PI Industries is a listed company, but then it's a 70-year-old company which the promoters are singles. They come originally from Udaipur. It started actually as the Mewar Oil Company. It started as a vegetable oil company, and then over the years transformed into a generic chemical company, which kind of made agrochemicals, copying some others, and in the last maybe 20-25 years has really developed into a high-tech chemical company, which has 2 business verticals. One where they make proprietary, IP protected intermediates or products for customers in Japan, Western Europe, and the US. Yeah? High margin, but requiring also very, very high technology and expertise to make that happen. And then they have a distribution business, in India, rural distribution business. So this company had approached me almost 2-3 years before I retired, saying that they would like me to be associated with that. Initially, I thought it was a board membership. Then they said, no, please, can you come and run the company? So that's how I ended up there. It was a short stint. It was a 2.5-year stint. Why is it only 2.5 years? One is I was kind of tired of the corporate life, because when you are operating at those levels, you have board meetings, and if it's a listed company, you have investor meetings which you need to deal with. And if you are somebody like PI, which, as you said, is if you look at the last 10 years, there are 2 companies which are the highest wealth creators in India. One is Bajaj Finance, and the other is SPI Industries. So the pressure is quite hard.
So little more on that, because I think you keep referring culture eats strategy for lunch. I think it's a Peter Drucker statement.
Absolutely.
I have seen you telling this 3-4 times, and Narayan Murthy keeps talking about this.
Yes.
So why is culture so important? Something more on that side.
Well, culture, because I think I referred to earlier. What is culture? Culture really is something where it enables the employees to perform at their peak potential or inhibits employees from working at their peak potential. That's how I would define culture. And there are lots of elements to it, right? And if you if you have to implement a strategy, and if you have to have operational excellence, you need people who are highly committed and highly energized. The other very important thing is, today the businesses are so complex. If somebody believes that the MD knows everything, and you can run the business by one person directing everybody else where to go and what to do, you will not survive for too long, because the complexity, the variables that you're dealing with, and the sheer knowledge that you require in various domains to run an enterprise is huge. So you really need to have an organization where the level of trust between employees is so high that people are taking, sometimes we have this cliche word saying that treat this as your company, right? Is this what you will do if this is your company? And it's all great to talk about, but if you really want to make that happen, that's where culture becomes very important. That you make people. Now, the best way to talk about this, and I love this this analogy, which actually is not mine. It's from Sumantra Ghoshal, who, if you have studied HR, was a great operational, organizational behavior expert, who taught in, the Fontainebleau, INSEAD in Fontainebleau in France, and then went on to become a professor of organizational behavior in London School of Business. And for the students here, I would encourage you to actually Google Sumantra Ghoshal, and there is an 8-minute video of him speaking in the World Economic Forum. So please have a look at that, and you will understand what I mean. Now, he talks about how when he was a professor at INSEAD in Fontainebleau, every year he would come for a summer vacation to Calcutta, because he was from Calcutta. And he would talk about how whenever he comes to Calcutta in summer, the temperature is, 38, 39 degrees, humidity is 90-95%, and you're completely exhausted from the time you wake up in the morning, right? On the other hand, he says in Fontainebleau, there are black forests, right? And in the spring, he would go into these forests for a leisurely walk. And he says that you go in there and you cannot walk leisurely, because there is something about the energy which is so energizing. You see people dancing, you see people singing, you see people running, you see people playing. And he says organizations are also like that. Once the minute you walk in, you can make out, is this organization, he calls it the smell of the place. So he says, when you walk in, you can make out whether it smells like summer in Calcutta or smells like spring in Fontainebleau, right? So culture is about creating an organization which smells like the spring in Fontainebleau. So it's a very, very simple way of explaining that. And if you have that, even if you have a weak strategy, you would still succeed because, you know, you have all that people rallying behind you. There are exceptions, and PI is an exception where, you know, it certainly didn't smell like spring in Fontainebleau, but as you said, you know, it's been a great creator. And it has been a great well creator because they had a tremendous strategy that was implemented 10 years, 15 years ago. And that still seems to work. But those are exceptions, right? And yeah.
There will always be exceptions.
Yeah.
Very well explained. So everything was going so well for you. I think you were at BASF, you had so much knowledge. You are a good coach also, I think many of you know. So you would have continued, you would have got a great or maybe consultant and many organization. Why academics?
Okay. So if you remember earlier on, I told you that it was my father's dream that I should become a, in fact, he even had a definition that I should be a poor academician with a lot of, you know, admiring students following me. That never happened. In fact, my father...
believe.
Huh?
That's what you believe. It would have happened.
Well, in the corporate
Admiring
career,
student,
it never happened. And an interesting story there is also when I used to be in, you know, based in Singapore, etc. Sometimes he would call me, and invariably because of time zones, I would be either at a business lunch or a business dinner. And so one day he called me, do they pay you all this money for you to just have lunches and dinners, you know? So that was a kind of where he came from, right? I mean, he was a very simple man, very honest man. But, you know, this was again a coincidence because I was felicitated in the November of 2021 by FICCI in an event in Chennai, in Delhi, where I was given the Lifetime Achievement Award for my contribution to the chemical industry. And our Chancellor, Samir, also happened to be there, and his company had also won an award for the CSR contributions that Godavari biorefineries had made. And I knew, obviously, our Chancellor before because of our chemical industry connection, and we decided to have breakfast the next morning, and she was kind of asking me, what am I doing and what are my plans? And I said, look, you know, enough of this, and I just want to do a bit of coaching, maybe be on the boards of a couple of companies, and he said, no, you shouldn't waste your time like this, you know, come to KJ Somaiya and do something here. So as some of you know, I came here to run the executive program. So that's how I got it. But I always had this passion to, I wouldn't say, I thought I was, you know, good teacher because I gave, you know, I kind of give reasonably good talks, right? When I talk to public, so I assumed that, you know, teaching is like that. But now I understand it's more than that. It's not as simple as that. You have all these AOLs and all this, you know, so so that's what got me here. Yeah. So and you know, just to get back to your point, of course, then 3-4 months after I was here, you know, I again got a call from Chancellor and said, current director's term is coming to an end, and would you, so actually, to tell you the truth, the way this went was, we had a conversation and he talked about, you know, the current Monica ma'am retiring, or her term coming to an end, and we left the conversation. On my way back, I was kind of pondering this conversation, and I was kind of thinking, now, was he offering me this job, or was he asking me to get a successor for this job? So then I was really confused, and that evening I called our Chancellor back, and I said, Samir, you know, so I clarified this, you know, what exactly, do you want me to look for somebody? You know, he said, no, look, if you want to take it, then you don't have to look for anybody, you know, so, and that's how I ended up here. But I saw this also, now you talked about my passion for change management, right? You know, how many of you were in the inaugural ceremony of our 23-25 batch? Now you all heard Rajiv Vij talk about finding a purpose, etc. Right? I have been thinking about my own purpose for a very long time. And I think over the last few years, I realized my purpose and what I love is change management, right? To create and change management to create an environment which brings the best out of people. So I thought this is another opportunity maybe to do something like that. So that's why I'm here in the academics. Yeah.
Great. So now you have a corporate guy inside, and you are an academician also. So now the challenge is to how to balance that. So you have to compete now. So there is a lot of competition. Even in Mumbai, now Niti becomes IIM, Bitsom, your friend is there.
Yeah.
So what is your thought? How we are going to do it? How we are going to do it differently? So
Yeah.
some thoughts on that.
So yes, competition is a reality, and that's why we are all here, right? I mean, if competition isn't there, Samir would just have a few professors and nobody else is required because people will come in. One is to compete, the other is what do you really want out of an institution like this? And I think the way that we should differentiate ourselves is really by ensuring that the students who graduate from here are different from many other MBA schools. Because many MBA schools put a lot of emphasis on hard skills, right? So there's a lot of analytical courses that are taught. And I know from experience that that is not good enough when you get into this, into the corporate world. The soft skills are equally important, perhaps even more important, right? And soft skills starts with, how do you behave, how do you work in teams to, and culminates in how well are you aware of yourself, right? Are you able to sense when you get angry? Are you able to sense when you are not comfortable with somebody? Are you an aggressive kind of a person or are you a permissive person? All these things will become extremely important when you get into the real world. So I think, one of the things that we should really emphasize on is this balance of hard skills and soft skills. More importantly, I believe where we can really differentiate is what the world needs today and what India needs today is really business leaders who have deep commitment to certain values and certain governance, principles of governance. Because, if you're an enterprise head, you're not just dealing with your money, right? You're dealing with the money from the bank, you're dealing with money from the investors, and you're running an enterprise which has got an impact on your customers and society. And it is very, very important to ensure that people with deep values and principles are heading organizations, are running businesses. Because in this country and globally, we have had more than enough share of people being cheated because we have business leaders who don't have deep commitment to values and principles. So to me, this is very important, and sometimes it's very evident from how you behave as a leader. And I would like to quickly share another brief anecdote. And again, for students, homework, you should Google a particular talk called Go and Kiss the World by somebody by name Subroto Bakshi. This was the commemorative speech of Subroto Bakshi in the 2004 or 2005 IIM Bangalore graduation, right? Now, Subroto Bakshi was the co-founder of a company called Mindtree, right? Which, if you have followed, was acquired by, there was a hostile acquisition by L&T about 4 or 5 years ago. But up until then was one of the, and continues to be one of the,
Ashok Sutta and this guy, Bakshi.
Yeah.
Sutta was the main, one of the...
Sutta was also there, yeah. So Bakshi was a man of impeccable values. And if you read Go and Kiss the World, you will hear, how he got those values, influence his parents, and how he kind of uses those values. So when I read this, and it was one of my young employees sent me this back in 2005, I immediately kind of told my wife, who manages my finance at home, saying, go and buy some Mindtree shares. And she went and bought some shares. And I can tell you it was one of those investments which probably gave me the highest returns ever, right? I think to me, if we can bring out 650 students who really stand out, I believe we also owe this to our legacy, to our founder, because that's where he came from, right? So to me, those would be the points of differentiation.
So we are YouTube live also, so maybe many alumni are also watching. So some advice for them, or maybe your thoughts on how we are going to liaison with them, how we are going to leverage on their help or their expertise.
Yeah. No, I think, look, for any business school, alumni, is as vital as the faculty and all of us at the institute, right? Because they basically, carry the flag about the institute. And of course, our alumni help us already in multiple ways. They are involved in selection process. Many of them come here, talk to all of you. There is a whole mentoring program where alumni are involved. They are happy to help. And they are also, if you create, we were, you were there in Bangalore when we met up with about 40 alumni. They were also very, very open about what needs to be done to get this institution to the next level. So my kind of request to alumni is to, let's continue whatever we are doing. We really need your engagement even more. And of course, since many of you are in a position to start thinking about giving back, not through these activities, maybe even monetarily, we also need to think about how you can make contributions which can improve the infrastructure here, which can improve the level of research that we do, research grants, to setting up chairs for professorship. So there is a lot of opportunities for alumni to contribute even more. First is, as I said, I really want to thank them because you guys already do a lot of, and more importantly, in addition to talking about what is it that you can do for the institute, we also need to start now talking about how can we continue to help you become successful in your career. Now we had this conversation, there were already people reaching out to us saying that, look, I need help here, can you help us? And so this is a two-way kind of channel in my opinion. So they help us and we need to also, so don't think that you have left the institute and you only have an obligation to us through these activities. I believe we still have an obligation to help you and support your journey.
Yeah, so related question, that industry academia tie-ups for the school, for students, because I know one of the main thought behind this event itself is I think you had a deep commitment to this, so something
Absolutely.
more on that.
That's right. See, again, in the business, if you are doing MBA, there is only so much you can learn, in the classes. A lot of your learning has to come from experience, and all of us are fortunate that we are in the city of Mumbai, which is the commercial capital. We all have a lot of contacts with industry. So we need to really leverage this, and we need to take this to the next level. Next level in the sense engaging them. We already have a lot of industry faculty who come and take classes here. We are thinking about how do we make sure that in every class that is taught or every course that is taught, up to 20% we will try and get industry representatives that come and talk so that the concepts that you learn as theory, you can also hear how is that being practiced, right? So that's one initiative that we are looking at. This whole capstone project that we are currently, formulating, where you could potentially work with industry, for a period of time. So that's another. Industries are always grappling with problems, right? And when and I know from my experience that we often engage very expensive market research and consulting companies. And we have very bright students here, guided by excellent faculty. I think we really need to think about how do we leverage this, human capital to solve the industry problem at, much more economically. I can tell you, today if you hire Bain, and I have hired organizations like Bain when I was at the SPI Industries, Can you, if I'm giving Bain a project, could one of you guess what would be the bill or what would be the value of the contract with a consulting agency like Bain or McKinsey?
Any guesses?
5 crores? Yes, yeah. Yeah, it will be anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 crores, right? Depending on the kind of sophistication of the project. And I can tell you, most of this, you guys will be able to do this at a much higher level of sophistication. Maybe you won't be able to produce as good a slide as the Bain guys do, and they all outsource it to some, experts here out in India. So how do we crack this and make us much more impactful? So that would be the areas that we should really, and then bringing people from the industry who can talk to all of you, because what you heard about career is one perspective from me, but there are several perspectives. People make careers through multiple approaches by taking different decisions. Some of them are very clear what they want to do, unlike me, right? I mean, so yeah, those are the kind of areas, and we do a lot of that already, right? But then it is this whole kind of attitude that this is not enough, we need to do more.
Okay, I think before we open for audience question, any final thoughts on whatever advice you want to give them, or maybe one more bit? Is there a luck somewhere? Do you think that is also important, or coincidence?
Absolutely. Now, look, I always believe that true in Hindu philosophy, that you need to do what you have to do with the fullest commitment. Yeah. But the fact is that the variables that you deal with are so many that things can go really differently. Yeah. And I gave you examples of several risky decisions that I've taken. I think this could have gone completely. I would not be sitting here, I'd probably be an unemployed guy somewhere, trying to make my ends meet. So, but that's the reality. So the recognition that there is this, you can call it luck, you can call it blessings, you can call it fate, it doesn't matter what it is. The fact is that it is an invisible hand which shapes, the principles of the universe. So I think you need to recognize that and you need to accept that. There is a great book called The Halo Effect written by this guy called Philip Rosendorf from IMD in Switzerland. Right? And he says that business success, only 50% is in your, or less than 50% is in your hands. Yeah, the other 50% is really being at the right place at the right time. So it has two effects. When you are very successful, this realization makes you humble, right? I mean, that things can still go wrong. So humility is very important. And when you do fail, you don't beat yourself up because you've done whatever you can to the best of your mind. And there are things that have gone wrong. I know people who never got to where I was, but who inherently had much greater potential. They had much better qualifications than I have. So I consider myself extremely lucky. So luck, blessings, fate, karma, I don't know, you can call it whatever you want, but please recognize that there is that element and it's not just you.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this aspect because in spite of doing so much, you are still acknowledging yes. And that is what humility is. And that is one of the core values at KJ Sim.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you more on this because I recently saw a mail which you sent to everyone. I think all of us are meeting you and you are terribly busy. But still you sent a mail and you said that some of you are not able to meet me. Please come and meet me and tell Mayank. So I think something more on humility because I know you are very passionate about this quality or this value.
This is a value that I got from my father. So he was a public health engineer, very accomplished person, both in research and in I think maybe the anecdote that best illustrates this is that when he passed away and as his body was lying in our house, what surprised me was that the biggest wreath was, the flower thing, arrangement, was bought by auto rickshaw driver who drove him every day. And by the way, he worked 2 days till before he died. So he would take this auto rickshaw guy. So the biggest wreath was brought by the auto rickshaw guy, and the second one was by the guy who collected in our street. Now, why did they do that? Because he had a special word for them every day. So he was, he didn't consider himself, he was able to sit, talk to them, help them. So I guess, when you kind of brought up in that kind of an environment, it's part of your DNA, so to speak. But other than that, I truly believe that, great leaders are really humble. Let me illustrate this with another example. In BASF, there was a board member, now I'm talking BASF SE, a board member by name Dr. Marsnowski. Yeah? And Dr. Marsnowski had been the member of BASF SE's board of directors for 15 years in his career, which is not a small accomplishment because there are about only 7 people who run that company, and to get to that position requires tremendous levels of intelligence, skills, etc. So Dr. Marsnowski was retiring in the year 2015, and I happened to be in Germany at that time, and I reached out to his office and said, I know that Dr. Marsnowski is retiring. I've come from Singapore, and I would like to just say hello to him. So his assistant office said, 1 o'clock, come and, we have an appointment with Dr. Marsnowski. So I was there, there is this building which is called E100 where all the board of directors sit, and I was at the security cleared, I was waiting. And his secretary then called, it's a tall building, so called the security, the office at the bottom and said, called me and said, Dr. Marsnowski has just landed from Sao Paulo, from Brazil, and he's on his way, he's going to be a few minutes late, so do you mind waiting? I said, absolutely no. Then Dr. Marsnowski came, entered the building, and I could see him walking towards the lift. He went up, and I said, okay, maybe the secretary will call me or the security guy will send me up. 5 minutes later, Dr. Marsnowski comes down and walks towards me and says, Raman, I'm so sorry I made you wait. Let's go up. Right? Now, what was the need for this person to do it? He's retiring of one of the most illustrious career in one of the biggest companies in the world, right? And I was probably 6 levels below him in the hierarchy of things. But, he had that courtesy to come down. So that's, and when you have such people, I think you realize that, you can't be anything other than humble, right?
Great. So all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
So anything interesting, anything would you have done and you would have realized, I have done it. Something.
So the wildest thing that
weirdest thing you think you've done.
Wildest and the weirdest thing that I did, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is a very... I used to do a lot of yoga, right? And I do Sirsasana also. And there was a regional kind of, or a global executive event where we were all taught one day to do things like eating fire, acrobatics, etc. And then in the end, we were supposed to stage a performance, for some of the executives or people who were there. So I chose the acrobatics team, and so we had kind of, come up with a skit where I would stand on my head, right in the middle on a table, on something. And so somebody saw that and the word got around. And about 2 months later, I was in Shanghai with the global management team, our president, vice president of the business, the finance head, etc. We had been reviewing the Chinese business, and I was in Singapore as a regional guy. And we were in, if you go to Shanghai, one of the poshest areas in Shanghai is called the Bund area, which is around near the river, and it has got some very fancy old buildings. And there is a very high-end French restaurant, and we were having dinner in this high-end French restaurant, and had a couple of glasses of wine, and there was discussion was flowing, and suddenly the one of them says, "Hey, Raman, we heard that you stand on your head." And, you know, and then the president, who is a very young guy from St. Gallen Business School by name Hans Reiners, Hans says, "Is that really true, Raman? You know, you do this here and I'll give you $50, right?" And I was very embarrassed and I said, "How the hell am I going to do, you know, Shirsasan in the middle of the table in a fancy French restaurant in the Bund area of Shanghai?" And I kind of threw, you know, kind of deflected it by saying, the vice president marketing was there. His name is Mike Hines today. He's a board member. I said, "Mike, if you stand up and dance on the table, then I will stand up on my head." And Mike, of course, stood up and started dancing. So I had to actually do a Shirsasan in that French, and I luckily managed to do it. But then we got back to the hotel, and about 15 minutes after we got back to the hotel, there was a knock on the door. And there was this guy, you know, who came with an envelope with $50 as the president had promised. So I guess that's one of the wildest thing. But there is also a message here. Huh? The message is that, you know, when you are in the corporate world, etc., something it is also about personal branding. It is also about taking opportunities to stand out. So to me, this was an opportunity to stand out in front of 5 most senior leaders of the business, and these things do matter. Yeah, so that's the message. So
stand
it is
out and stand out.
Yeah, yeah, stand out upside down. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So game for a rapid fire.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we have that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Okay. So small answers, obviously.
Yeah.
Morning person or night person?
Oh, morning, clearly. Yes.
Okay. Exercising or playing a sport?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Favorite sport?
Table tennis.
Table tennis.
Yes.
Okay. Listening to music or watching movies?
More watching movies. Yeah. Less of a listener to music, but I do listen to music, but it's not all the time. Yeah.
Last movie you watched, you remember?
Last movie. Actually, the last, you know, I'm a OTT person, so
Yeah, so
I
that
guess
was
the
my-
last one that I watched was probably this one about Fukushima. You know, there's a documentary on that. But in terms of movie, I'm trying to remember. This movie where this movie all about the stolen jackfruit, Cuttle.
Ah.
Yeah, that's right.
I think
Yes.
Sanya Malhotra.
Yes, love that one. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Foodie or a frugal eater?
Somewhere in between. Yes.
The favorite food then?
Favorite
Dish,
foods are quite a few. So from South, I like vada. I'm a big vada fan, and I'm always looking. You know, sometimes you have in life, you have this memory of this perfect food that you've eaten, and you're constantly looking for it. So I'm still looking for that perfect vada. I haven't found that. The second thing is. I love, in the 90s, I used to spend a lot of time up north traveling in Punjab and Haryana. And one of my favorite memories of food is waking up in the month of November, December, driving down and eating paratha with the clear white butter.
On the dhabas,
on the roadside dhaba,
I can relate to
yeah.
that.
But then they are not there anymore. All of those dhabas are gone. Now of course you have these big fancy dhabas where they say they provide the same stuff, but I went and had that, it is not the same. So I'm still searching for the dhaba with that perfect paratha and the white butter,
I would give you some.
Okay.
You like ice cream? If yes.
I'm a big fan of sweets. Ice cream is
Which flavor?
So I guess my most favorite dessert that way is if you're in the Lebanese restaurant, you get this baklava plus rose petal ice cream. So I think there is nothing to beat that.
Yeah.
But I'm
Exclusive choices.
Yes,
Great.
yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So he's revealing a lot of things now. Okay. Any travel destination on your bucket list now?
Yes.
No. Yeah.
travel destinations, bucket list, clearly go back to Masai Mara.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
yeah, I would like to kind of at least reach the foot of Himalayas. I don't think I've, yeah, that would be certainly the second one. Yeah.
So the last question, I think you read a lot of books. The book you influenced you the most.
The book that influenced me the most. Fiction. So one is from a long time ago is this book called To Kill a Mockingbird, right? So I can see a hands
Yeah,
going
some
up
of
there.
you can relate.
Fascinating book, and I always loved this perspective of a girl child about the parent, right? In a setting where there is a lot of injustice, and more recently, the book that I have really loved is a book called Gentleman in Moscow. I don't know whether any of you read it. I would really recommend. I mean, it's a fascinating book with a lot of very interesting quotes, which are of great relevance to life. Yeah, but the story is also a fascinating story about this is set during the revolution when Stalin took over, and it is one of those bourgeois guys who is imprisoned in this hotel called Hotel Moscow, which is actually one of the oldest hotels in Moscow. And it's the story of his life. He is never allowed outside the hotel, and it's the story of his life there.
Great. Thank you. I think we should give him full marks.
Thank you. Now it's been
Okay.
great talking, but
So-
I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Questions, please. Now, I think how we are going to take.
Yeah, I can see some hands going up. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
So I want to ask whether there were any instances in your life where you had to step out of your comfort zone and take risk, and how did those contribute to your success?
So I think I talked to you about at least 2-3 examples of stepping out of comfort zone from early on when I had the cushy job in Pune and take permanent government, central government job, and then moving away from there to a contract position in Africa and Philippines. The second place was when I decided to quit, forego my Australian permanent residency and a potential comfortable life in Australia to coming back to Mumbai to run what was at that time seemed like a highly risky business. So those are a couple of the examples, and all of them significantly contributed to who I am today, right? And if I had not taken those decisions, this would have been a different path. Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, you have achieved so many things in your life. I just want to ask, how are you able to manage work life and personal life? How are you able to balance it?
So you can ask them, I leave at 5 o'clock.
Yes, I can.
So, but in your earlier stage, when you were traveling everywhere.
So even in my earlier life, typically I have always managed to, there were times in my life, probably when I was like 30 to 40, when I would still go to office, and this was a culture at that time, even in Bombay, etc. Although it was 5-day working week, many people ended up in the office on a Saturday. Reflecting back, I think it was more from my insecurity rather than trying to accomplish anything. Most of us didn't really much work on Saturdays. We just went there, had lots of tea and, vada pav and all that. And but apart from that, most of the time I have been able to, for example, not do anything during the weekend, not go to work. I typically would start work on a Sunday evening to clear all my emails and be ready for the Monday morning meeting. And because I had other interests, so throughout my life, I have been, as I pointed out, involved in sports, right? And when you are involved in sports and when you have a community which you develop because of that sports, that is a motivation for you to get out of work, at the right time. That's also a motivation for you to be more efficient at work, because when you get into work, you will find that you can happily spend 2-3 hours really not focusing on your work and doing a lot of other things like talking to people, etc., which are important to some extent, but that takes away time. So if you have then motivators which enhance your efficiency because you want to get out and be with another group of people and do something else, I think so. Those were, I think, the triggers which helped me to really balance my life, to some extent. But then if you ask my wife and kids, they will tell you that, it was really work and play, and so he wasn't really spending much time with the family. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
He needs to be given the next chance because I've seen her hand up right from the beginning.
Sir, you spoke about the coincidences and choices that have led you here, but I believe that having a successful career requires a strong support system. So, could you talk about a choice that your family or your support system made that have impacted you?
Absolutely great question, and thanks for asking this question, because sometimes I don't acknowledge enough the role that my wife played. By the way, my wife actually is an engineer who has a master's in power electronics from University of Wisconsin, right? So she could have had a fabulous career, but she actually worked for a couple of years and gave that up when we had our children, right? Because we realized that this was probably not possible. So yes, that was a big career choice that she made, which has made whatever I have today possible, because we could not have moved in so many countries. We could not have taken some of those risky decisions if that decision and that sacrifice was not done by my wife. So that's been a great support system, and since then, so like I said, while many times in my life, for example, if you're doing a regional job in Singapore, I used to spend 110 days out of Singapore, right? I mean, traveling, and the fact that my wife was there taking care of the children, attending to their needs, that's a great support system. So great question, and really need to acknowledge that was something that was very, very important and contributed to my success. Yes.
So good afternoon, sir. I am Nikita Anand. So, sir, you talked about you have studied at ICAR, that is near Old Rajendra Nagar. I have also spent a lot of my life there. So, my first question is, how was your life there near Old Rajendra Nagar and Patel Nagar area? And my second question would be, so you are talking about your risk taking and career path change and all. So, what I have observed, your career graph has always gone up. So is there any failure in your life, and if yes, then how have you get through that phase of failure?
So first, my life in Pusa Institute, it's again fabulous memories, because this was in the when was it? 1981, 82, 80, 81, 82. Delhi was a very different place. There was no pollution. It was winters used to be fabulous. We were in hostels and Old Rajendra Nagar, the Rachna Theatre. A lot of time spent watching movies in Rachna Theatre, right? So a lot of memories. A lot of opportunities to play sports. We had some very good sports team. We used to compete even with colleges like St. Stephen's at that time. And it was a very important phase, and a lot of network, and there are a bunch of us who are all over the world doing different things, and we are still in touch.
Incidentally, I was passing through that area in those years because I stayed very close to that Pusa Road.
Okay.
The Rajori Gardens, so we used to pass through.
Yes, that's right. Shankar
But
Road.
it's so small. We never crossed
it is, yeah. Now, in terms of failures, look, there are lots of failures, right? I mean, I can't remember failures that have been catastrophic, but there have been failures. For example, I always felt that when I was the head of one of the business verticals in the region, the Asia Pacific region, that was not a very comfortable, successful stint for me. And primarily because I felt that, and it again comes back to what is your purpose and where your strengths lie. When you're managing a regional business, which is spread over 15, 16 countries, there is only so much that you can bring. You know, you're sitting in Singapore and there is the business head in Japan, the business head in India. So a lot of the time you kind of really running the business by looking at numbers and spreadsheets and having talks and why not this, that, etc. Now that's not been my area of strength, and it never gave me much of a joy. So I would consider that as not a failure, but certainly a phase where I didn't really do what I could have done. And that I've seen people who really love doing that, and they do those kinds of jobs much better. And so I've been less effective in that job. So that'd be definitely one. Now, what is the learning from it? The learning is really that what are you good at? And then choosing the right job, yeah, and opting for the right job. Yeah.
As you said, as you said that you work as a vice president and you handle Asia Pacific market also, and like generated billions of revenue. So my question was like how it feels like to being at that power, handling that power at VP level, handling that revenue.
Yeah. Oh, this is quite an interesting question because you can look at it saying it is a position with a lot of power. Really fascinated me too much, and I'm telling you this sincerely, not motherhood statements. Yeah. Now, and I know that there are a lot of people who love that kind. They love the power that comes with it. But to me, that was a very illusionary kind of a situation, right? The question that I had always asked is, what can you do with that power to make this place a better place or make the enterprise a better place? So I don't know whether that answers your question. Yeah. But it's always nice. It's nice to travel business class. It's nice to have a, beautiful big cabin. Nice to all these things. But I think it's important.
I think success has a different definition for everyone.
Absolutely.
I think most successful people are those who are doing what they always wanted to do. So I think that way you are enjoying your job. So I can.
Just
wanted to add.
Yes, I think that the mic is there. We'll take his question and then come back to you. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Shubham Jitskar.
Yeah.
And sir, having so much experience in corporate, do you find
a lot of difference in the cultures across in the same company also. And let me try to illustrate this. The Western European and German culture, and to a great extent the Japanese culture, puts a lot of emphasis on planning, right? So there is a lot of emphasis on defining every step before you start to execute. Whereas in India, it's a little bit different, we are by nature not tremendous planners, right? Now there is a reason why we are not tremendous planners, because in Japan, let's take a simple example. Now you say that I'm going to meet you in your office in Osaka at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. There is a 99.9% chance that you will be able to do that, because you will take a train from Tokyo to Osaka, which will reach exactly by second, as the ticket says. You will take the cab from there to the office and it will be exactly as the Google predicts. That doesn't happen in India, right? So the value of planning, if you have 10 steps in a project and if you plan all the 10 steps, the value that you derive because the variables outside your control are so many in India is a bit less. So I've always justified that that's why we are not great planners, because the efficiency, it's actually much more efficient to plan 2 steps, take 2 steps and then decide what the next 2 steps are going to be. Having said that, I'm not condoning lack of planning, because I think that's not the way to do anything. We need to plan. Even if things don't go well, at least we need to have some idea as to what the 10th step is going to be, right? So that's a big difference that you see. The Western society is a very egalitarian society. So, there is only so much that you can do to excite a group of Germans to go beyond their normal duty to kind of contribute to an enterprise. Yeah? For example, in August, most Germans will go on a vacation, right? In fact, today they have rules that you can't even call your boss. No, you can't even call your secretary after 5 o'clock in Germany, right? Whereas in India, if you have the right leader, if you have the right inspiration, if you have the right objective, you can get, people will go beyond anything to make sure that we achieve that, right? I've seen this time and again. But then you need to have the right leadership, right kind of environment. So those are a couple of the big differences that I can talk about. Yeah, that comes to my mind immediately.
How we are doing on time? We have 1 or 2 more. Okay, 2 to 3 more questions.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sampuran. So, like you were talking about life choices, wherein you had one choice of going to Australia and coming back to India. So, often we have some choices in life. So, how do we choose that? To give you a little bit of context, right after my 12th, I wanted to go into law. But then I completely chose a polar opposite career, wherein I did my BBA, and here I am. So I don't regret my decision, but at times I do think that I would have been somewhere doing my LLM or something similar. So how do we choose as an which would reap more benefits? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So one way is obviously if you have 2 options, you kind of try and list objectively what are the pros and cons of each of those. Right? But that objective decision-making process only works up to a certain extent, right? Because you can always think about some more pro for one side and one more con for another side. And why is that? Because there is something that your heart really wants, and heart, tells you. So the principle that I've always adopted and I've always recommended is that you do all your objective analysis, put it under your pillow, sleep and listen to your heart, and next day morning get up and take the decision which your heart tells you, right? And that's invariably the right decision. The second principle of decision making, and this is something that came to me again, a small anecdote, in 1996, I had this great job in Mumbai in Sandoz. I was headhunted by this American company called American Cyanamide, and I submitted my resignation, accepted the other offer, and I was having deep regrets about it, because Sandoz, Swiss company, great company, going into an American company, did I really do the right thing? So there was a senior manager at the time in Sandoz by name Dore. He's still there. He runs a very vibrant consulting company at the age of 70, which consults in the pharma arena. So I went to Dore's office and I said, Dore, I'm really kind of having this regret, or I don't know whether I did the right decision. So he told me one phrase which I am going to tell you now. He said, Raman, life is a drama with no dress rehearsal. You have no opportunity to do a dress rehearsal. You have taken a decision, that's it, you have acted. You cannot retract it, right? So the only way is, do all the pros and cons, listen to your heart, take a decision, and don't worry whether it is the right decision or the wrong decision. It is the right decision because you cannot change it, right?
Thank you,
I
sir.
don't know whether it helps. Yeah.
We'll take one or two maximum.
Sir, my name is Nikhil. So like you laid great emphasis on an enabling environment and on change. So I truly see you as a visionary stepped up in here. I've seen a lot of change around in this campus, but truly like I want to ask you, what is that really you're looking forward to for our institute, and if you could share it with us, probably we'll be the ones who'll carry our legacy tomorrow, so we'll still have that vision.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so we have 4 goals for the institute, just to, it's not a vision, it's very concrete goals for the next 3-5 years. One is as a business school, and even for you when you graduate, very important topic is what is the ranking of the school, right? And so we have a very clear objective that we should be in the top 25 ranking, NIRF ranking in the next 3 to 5 years. You know that we moved from 71 to 45, so we feel fairly confident that this is not something that is unachievable goal at this point. Similarly, I think we need to also move into global ranking now. For example, the FT management ranking, because those are all big differentiators, right? So that's clearly one goal. The second concrete goal is, we are an AACSB certified institution. For business schools, there are 2 other certifications or accreditations which are very important. One comes from Europe, which is called AMBA, and the other is, EQUIS. EQUIS is Europe, and AMBA is the British one from BGA. So we already have started working on the BGA or the AMBA one, and we need to get, and there are not too many institutions that have all the 3 accreditations. I think there are only 3 institutions today which have all the 3 accreditations. So that's the other goal. The third one is all about you. We call it as day 1 ready students on soft skills, hard skills, values, and governance. So a lot of the academic program, the capstone projects, all of these are designed to really, enhance all these 4 kind of skill sets or competencies in the graduating students, because really at the end of the day, our vision is that you should be seen differently from other business schools graduates, right? And that's really, and the fifth one is, we are a teaching and a research organization, and the level of, when we already do great research, but that level of research needs to really go up. And they're all of these are linked in some one way or the other, because all of these leads to better ranking, better perception, better outcome for all of you as students when you come out, and stand in the corporate world. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, done? Or last question? Okay, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Raman. I'm Abhay. You shared a story of you not going to Australia, rather coming back to Mumbai to see the business here. So what you had done if the things went south, and did you have a backup plan here? And also, sir...
Good question.
And also, sir, one add-on question to that.
Yeah.
If I'd like you to name one influential person in your life who had the most maximum amount of influence in your life in shaping up your life, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great question. Yeah. So did I have a contingency plan? I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, it's very difficult in life to constantly think of, you can have a contingency business plan, but contingency life plan is a to think about. But it's a good question, and the frank answer is no. But sometimes it will helpful to have contingent. But I guess I had the confidence that if it didn't work out, there are other jobs where I could, probably try and make a success out of that. So that's the answer. Influential people, there have been more than one. So you heard, my respect for my dad. So he clearly was a big influence on me. There have also been people who have influenced me without even coming in contact with me. I mean, let's forget all the international, figures like Gandhi, etc. I'm talking about real life people who have. So when I joined Sandoz, I would constantly hear people talk about somebody by name Venkat Sohoni. Yeah? And Sohoni was like this, during his time, etc. So I tried to kind of understand who is this person and when was he there. And it turned out that he was actually in Sandoz 10 years before I even joined, right? And he had moved on, and there have been two leaders who had come in, and yet they were still talking about, Dr. Sohani. Now, Dr. Sohani obviously was a great guy. He was actually a computer science graduate in the PhD in computer science in the 60s from IIT Delhi, who worked in IBM, and then IBM was kicked out by Madam Gandhi, so he moved into Sandoz, and he ran a business in Sandoz very successfully. He was so good that Sandoz took him to the US, and then he continued. I mean, he's still alive today. He comes to India. He worked with Tatas for some time, etc. Now, the message there is, the influence is that's when I understood what does leaving a legacy mean. Yeah, that 10 years after this gentleman has moved on, there are still people talking about him and what he did in the institution. So that influenced me quite a bit. So to me, when we talk about leaving a legacy, that's the kind of thing. So Dr. Sohani was a great influence, in terms of. There have been others. I mean, my German boss, Marcus Held, who was the helm of affairs, was a great influence because I have not seen anyone who has so much energy and so much time for people, right? He would be in the office till 8, 9 because he was in Germany and there were global people coming. I would write to him saying, look, I'm in Germany, can I meet you? Invariably, there would be a dinner appointment. You would find the time to spend. You would spend 2-3 hours. So how do people like him influence me by that level of energy, the level of commitment to your team members, being able to spend time to understand, in informal settings. So yeah, quite a number of, but maybe I'll limit to these 3 people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, but yeah, of course, we should have one question from the faculty. Yeah.
Sure. Give her the mic, please. Give her the mic.
No. Good question. I speak about 10 words of Japanese, about 4 or 5 words of German. I mean, that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Absolute.
A couple of words of Chinese, like ni hao and yeah.
Great. I think we can go on and on. Absolute pleasure listening you, and I think the kind of knowledge, the wealth of knowledge, the commitment, the deeper understanding of the business education. And I think he's not going anywhere. He's going to be here, so we would hear him more on many platforms. So I think as of now we should stop, and obviously we should thank him.
No, thank you.
And, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Really, it was, yeah.
And I think let's do some more things. I think part of organizing committee, we would like to express a token of our gratitude, and I would invite Dr. Kripa to please step in. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we have written something, whatever we felt. Maybe it's maybe passive. I don't know if there's always a short of words we face when we see an inspirational personality like you. So I'm humbled to read the message on behalf of our institution. Please allow me to do so. May I? Dear Raman Ramachandran, in this ruthless world of cutthroat competition, it is serendipitous to come across a leader who is assertive yet humble, aggressive yet dignified, and persistent yet mindful. The man who led the world's largest chemical company chose to transform an academic institution symbolizes versatility. The path you crafted to define and live your life is inspirational. Your journey, which is intertwined with choices and coincidences, teaches the lesson of letting go and meaningfully holding on. It is the rarest opportunity that life offers to rewind and relive the moments of an ordinary man becoming an extraordinary leader. Today, On Careers and Conversations, we are privileged to learn from your life's journey. We are sure the legacy you left behind at your earlier organizations will be surpassed by the legacy you will leave behind. With love, KJ Somaiya, Institute of Management. May I invite Arvind sir and Arvind, who has equally worked on this write-up.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. I request Bhavesh to come forward with the mug which we'd like for you to sign, Raman, sir. The mug will be there only. As we come to the end of today's conversation, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Raman sir and Arun sir for their invaluable contribution to the inaugural lecture of Careers and Conversations. Your insights have truly made the event remarkable. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Arvind sir, Kripa ma'am, Meenal ma'am, and the technical team for their remarkable efforts in ensuring the success of the event. Furthermore, I want to acknowledge the continuous support of the PR and branding team as well as the alumni committee. To everyone present here, students and faculty, thank you for being such a great audience and joining us in this enlightening session. That is it from my side. Thank you. We'll be stopping the live stream now.